Hi everybody. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience of my 15 seconds of feminist fame. And I want to preface this with reminding you that there's really nothing extraordinary about what happened to me, that this story is really common this day and age, especially anybody that's talking about gender online. There are lots of books about this. Jessica Valenti at the end of Sex Object has an appendix where she just lists a bunch of terrible things people have tweeted to her. Lindy West has written about this in Shrill and has famously since left Twitter. I have a different relationship with social media, but I can totally understand why she left. So while all this was happening to me and how quickly it escalated, I figured it would probably fizzle out, even though it was really unpleasant during the time. So I have your questions here. So what happened was I sent a tweet that is very similar to lots of other tweets that I write, and had written that toxic masculinity was killing us, because I really believe that toxic masculinity is bad for everyone, men too. And so, and had repeated it 3 times because it fit really nicely, and it was just visually appealing, which I think is interesting and important for social media. So I tweeted that, and then my friend, who is a prominent writer, retweeted it. I have since turned off the ability to retweet my tweets, which is unfortunate because it was good, right? It was good. It was an important thing to be said, and it was great that they had retweeted it. So I retweeted it, and then, so he retweeted it, and then the next day I was in my office and my phone rang, and it was somebody from, not Campus Reform. They eventually called the Daily Beacon, which I figured was probably, right, slanted publication. Didn't have time to look it up, but again, it is my job to be an academic and answer questions. So if somebody is in good faith going to ask me questions, I'm going to answer them. So we spent about 45 minutes on the phone. I thought it was a relatively engaging conversation. And I knew the piece would have a little bit of backlash, but nothing big. And there was like this weird last line that they dug deep into my Twitter feed about something I had said about Mike Pence being white savior, because I think he acts like he has a white savior complex. Again, this is not a particularly hot take on anything, nothing new. So other than that, it was pretty fair. Wrote to her and said I thought it was really fair and thanks. So I got a few kind of weird messages calling me a misandrist, which is a man-hater. This is a really common thing that people get called when they text or tweet about gender. So then the first question is, how did I start to recognize there was a backlash occurring, and what were the early signs, and how did you react? So what very quickly happened, well, the way I knew is I went in on Tuesday of that week for a department meeting, and my department chair said to me, kind of half, joking, like, I just got this really weird email saying basically like how terrible a person you are and how you should be fired. I was like, okay. So I quickly recognized what that meant and explained to him what was going on and started actually researching what academics do in this situation. I quickly emailed my university administration, including President Hawkinson, and told them what was going on. Told them if they ever had any questions about the work I do, that they are welcome to ask me. I'm, very public about my work, and so I wanted to kind of stop this, whatever was about to happen, and make sure that my administration knew what was going on. And if they had questions, to please ask me instead of rely on whatever else might be out there. Somebody asked if there have been lasting consequences with admin. So this is a great time for me to talk about the privilege that I have. I am tenured, so I'm not an adjunct. I have the protection of tenure as well, right? So I'm tenured, not tenure track anymore. I work at a university that has a union. So I was very supported by the union. My race and my class allow me to have privilege in this situation. People want to believe me, and that is not the case for every academic based on intersections of race, class, gender. So I was positioned well to be okay, and it very easily I could have not been okay if I didn't have those protections. So those protections really matter, and they're really important. And I have felt completely supported by staff, faculty, and students. People were incredible allies once this really began to spin out of control. So the strategies that I would offer if you deal with similar backlash. So what happened is then Tucker Carlson invited me to be on his show. I said yes. Well, I said I would talk with the showrunner the next day. The next morning I had woken up, my Twitter feed had exploded. Hate tweets, people suggesting they were buying assault rifles for me. My department reported these as death threats to the university. And so a lot of this began to spin out of my control. And I felt like the best way to control what was happening very quickly, and I was really afraid I was going to get doxxed, and may have, I just don't know. So doxxed is like when all my public information gets pushed out there. So like I said, I tried to shut down what I could. I kept my Twitter feed open, but I had a bunch of allies who were stepping in and screenshotting and watching what was going on so that I didn't have to. So that is a strategy that really is important. Somebody needs to keep watch, but it needs to not be you, because you will devolve into a very bad place. So I told Tucker Carlson, no, I'm not going to be on your show. I thought it all ended. And then 2 nights later, all of a sudden my Facebook Messenger feed was like all these terrible things. People were finding my husband and writing these messages. So I knew something happened, and then somebody I knew wrote to me and was like, hey, my dad just had on Fox News and Tucker Carlson just did a show about you. So in that moment, Friday night, I'm getting out of bed, and I found out you can only deactivate your Twitter from a computer, can't do it from a phone. Very helpful hint. And deactivated my Twitter. And just because I was like, I don't need to provide the cesspool for these people to just like go to town on me. Some people were super ambitious and found my school email address. Some people mailed me physical mail. Fortunately, nothing came to my home. So I feel like that was great that didn't infiltrate my home space. So strategies, if you are ever dealing with similar backlash, make sure you have allies that are watching, screenshotting, and reporting. Most of those trolls have actually since been kicked off of Twitter because people were patrolling for me. If you feel like you need to deactivate your Twitter, I didn't end my account because I use it. I mean, I use it to promote my ideas. I've had a lot of great experiences and offers to participate in things because of my life on social media. So, I didn't do anything wrong. And this third question here is what I've worded it differently. No, I wasn't saying anything extraordinary. I wasn't saying anything that I don't believe. And I wasn't saying anything that I don't think is important to talk about because I really want, these terrible, I had written that after the shooting in the Texas church because I want this to stop. Like, I need this to stop. Like it's, and I feel like my voice is part of that conversation of what are we not talking about? So one of the questions is, what is my response to the Tucker Carlson piece on me? I have no idea because I never watched it. Allies watched it. They have told me it was not great and did not put forth my ideas. However, what I said to everybody was, well, I said no, and that does create a vacuum to be filled in by something else. And so some of that is on me, but I also didn't see how it would be productive to go onto a show where someone was just going to talk over me and just make me look silly and not engage with my ideas. I love talking about ideas. I am not interested in ad hominem attacks. I don't do them. I see what other people say about politicians. I mean, I'm human, so maybe I don't want to say always, but like I try to keep about ideas. I try not to make it ad hominem, and this was definitely ad hominem. If I had sent out one tweet about the show, it maybe would have been an invitation to actually have a conversation that was a conversation that engaged with an idea without immediately thinking I was wrong. Now, I understand that that's loaded, right? Like, this is kind of the world we live in now. People just assume the other person's wrong right away. So I appreciate when I am given a venue or an opportunity to talk about my ideas. The most heartbreaking thing for me during this time was probably the students who were calling for my firing. Again, I heard about this through other means. I maybe would have tweeted maybe my one tweet would have been inviting them to my office to actually talk to me. The fact that somebody would think it's completely appropriate to call for my lifetime of work and the livelihood of my family just because they didn't like a tweet I wrote seems really brazen. And I think if I had a conversation and showed them that I am human, maybe they wouldn't be so quick to want to undermine my entire family's livelihood. So that was really hateful. And yeah, that really upset me. And it upset me that my students were upset about it because, you know, I had heard that there were rumors that I had been fired. I mean, it's just, this is ridiculous stuff, right? Ridiculous stuff. Just to put into context, think about how silly it would be for somebody who has a huge body of work about this topic to be fired about something that was distilled into 140 characters. This is ridiculousness. So yeah, that was really, really a painful part of this. So maybe the one tweet I would have sent would have been an invitation to a conversation, to remind people that what they say actually really matters. And so I think sometimes people forget that on social media, that what they say matters. And if you don't want your tweet to be retweeted 1,000 times around the world, you should be careful about what you say. So I am back on Twitter. I am active on social media. I have a love-hate relationship with all of it. I understand that it's a way that we're talking now, and I want to be part of every platform that's talking. I want to be part of the conversation and meet people wherever they can be met. And I don't expect people to listen to my hour-long podcast or watch me on a half-hour show. So if like a tweet here or there helps them rethink something, then great. I'm going to keep doing that. I wasn't going to let bullies kick me off a platform that I think is valuable. So just be careful. And, you know, the thing that carried me through all this, I think, is because I really believed what I said. If this had all happened and it was something I was just being flip about, this would have been a lot harder. But because I felt so committed to the thing I had written, it was easy for me to weather this storm. And I knew the storm was going to be pretty brief. There are tons of resources online, the Center Against Online Violence. I was looking up some stuff that, people had written about Gamergate, what academics have written, because this is happening to a lot of academics. It's not just me. So if this happens to you, there are other people that this has happened to. Look up the resources, see what is out there, ask for help, seek out allies. Deactivate accounts for as long as you are comfortable. You do not need to provide people a platform to batter you. I have no idea what most people said about me on Facebook once Tucker Carlson posted the story. They can say whatever they want. They can devalue my work. They can, make death threats against me. Sadly, I think this is the world we live in. And then have really good allies like Dr. Folk, who then analyzes the data and tells you what's going on. So thanks for asking, and I hope this was helpful. And if you ever have any more questions, my Twitter handle is @CLUTZ, Come on over for the ride, and you can, learn a little bit more about gender along the way. All right, thanks.